So African Researchers Network is an academic hub that is open to both African and non-African researchers. Membership spans across various academic disciplines and also includes PhD researchers and early late career scholars from various universities in Europe, America, Canada, and many African nations. Our objectives are to enhance collaboration and networking, to share information on job opportunities and life generally across the globe, to discuss our publications and ongoing research, to improve our visibility of African scholars and authors, and also to bring African insights into interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary approaches to research teams across the globe. And talking about activities, we actually do a lot. We actually organize monthly seminar series with focus on Africa or on topics that would enhance our professional development opportunities. We also organize a yearly conference on issues relating to methodologies, approaches to doing research on Africa. We provide collaborative frameworks for various research projects with stakeholders in UK, US, Canada, and Africa, including funding bodies, research institutions, think tanks, and publishers. We also enable context for academic interaction towards minding cultural gaps between learning and teaching in Africa and Europe. And also we network with other institutional-based Africa research network, such as ARN, MERN, AFNET, and a couple of others. So for today's webinar series, our speaker for today who will be speaking first is no other person but Dr. Benjamin Obeghare Izu. Sincere apologies if I didn't get the pronunciation correctly. So I'm just quickly going to read his biography before he takes the stage. So who is Dr. Benjamin? Dr. Benjamin is currently a postdoctoral research fellow at Nelson Mandela University with the Department of Music and Performing Arts. He obtained his DLitt Field degree in musicology in the year 2017 from the University of South Africa. His master's in musicology in 2012 from UNISA, and his BAED honors in music education from Delta State University, Nigeria. Dr. Benjamin has served as a research assistant between the years of 2011 and 2012 at the Center for Evaluation and Assessment in University of Pretoria, and also as a research associate in 2018 in the Department of Music in University of Pretoria, and also as a research fellow in 2019 at University of KwaZulu-Natal. Dr. Benjamin's current field of research is ethnomusicology, specifically in African cultural studies, cultural music, and dance ethnography. He is interested in ethnic music history and world music. So I would like you all to welcome Dr. Benjamin with a virtual clap while he takes the stage. So Dr. Benjamin, over to you.
Thank you so much, David. That's quite a lot to take in. I didn't even know I wrote those. Everything looks quite interesting. I think this is my first time of joining this session, and I hope I'll be able to meet up with the standard that has been laid down before. I was supposed to be the third speaker today, but I'm currently the first speaker. I think nothing happened for no reason. So I will take the floor and try as much as possible to keep with the time. I'll be speaking today on, like you heard from David. I'm most interested in African music, which have been able to research on. I did some research on Nigerian music in Nigeria, in two cultures, in Urhobo culture and Bini culture in Nigeria. And currently I'm based in South Africa, and I'm still carrying out with my research on also traditional music, which I'm currently working on. So I'm going to speak on the African culture and indigenous musical practices, which is linked to what we the intersectionality of African culture. Because we know African culture, it has to do with us as a person, and it has to do with what we believe in. So everything that pertains to African cultures, they are interrelated. So the music is related to the rituals, the dance, traditional dance, and traditional music that are related to one particular thing or the other. But there's one thing that we can take from African culture and indigenous musical practices is majority, if not all African society, they don't just perform music or dance to music just for entertainment, but there are some ritualistic tendencies to the songs and to the music that they use for most things. So we start by going through and think. Austin can go to the first slide now. So you can take your time to go through it as well. So I might be fast and I might be slow at some point, depending on uh, the states of mind I am. So since our pre-colonial times, African musical practices have undergone and continue to undergo changes and continuities. That's what we all can agree. The changes have been going on and the continuity is there. So before colonialism, indigenous musical practices, a part of African society, part of our custom, part of our culture. We African society developed, they transmitted, performed, and learned indigenous musical skills, expertise through communal ceremonies. These practices were impaired during the colonial era. That's what most of us can agree to. The emergence of Christian religion instilled locals an attitude that undermined the words, the significance, and the place of indigenous musical practices under the false illusions of morality. Missionaries and colonial administrators forbade local communities from practicing and performing indigenous musical practices, music, which is music and dance, and other form of musical practices. These changes put indigenous music and dance in detrimental position as a contemporary audience view them as outdated and other forms have encroached on its space. Like during my research in Nigeria, the musical aspect of Owe Festival is a traditional festival in Delta State, Nigeria, I'm from there, which I did research for about 2 years. Most of the songs that they normally use during the festival, they have been modernized. They have been altered to suit in the modern trends, which is something we still speak about because now the contemporary audience now they view them as outdated. They view the old song, which really has the meaning of the African roots. They view it as outdated. So the situation has led to the following questions. Are indigenous African musical practices headed for extinction? What is the value of indigenous musical practices in African society and what are its prospects? Just a moment. Let's see where I am. Okay, I think you can go to the next slide. That should be my introduction. I think we'll just try to follow up with the slide. If not, then we can just, wherever it takes us on my time, then we can just stop there. According to Irene, culture involves a totality of attributes that are unique to a people to the point that it distinguishes them from other people and other cultures. The language, the clothes, which is the costume, the music, the art, the religion, and the dance form of people are examples of these unique attributes. So dance and music, we can say they are intricately linked to represent the people's culture and the way of life. Indigenous dance and music is a reflection of beliefs, norms, and the values of a particular culture. It was embedded in the culture of a people that can be reflected in their dance, in their musical practices. So it's the culture that people reflect the musical performances that they perform. Culture is a dense human thread that connects community or group of people together as one. It is small inherent things that are common, meaningful, and significant to a specific people. Culture is perceived to as a behavior, beliefs, common ideas, attitude of people who are linked by their environment, their language, their geographical location. As a result, culture is essential for healthy society. It is, it is usually obtained through education, observation, exposure to the environment, and based on enlightenment. In many African societies, the way indigenous musical practices are used and their functions are somewhat varied. Dance and music are not standalone art form solely for entertainment, as I earlier stated, but they are vital elements of cultural tradition. That's Dakwa 2016. So the context for indigenous dances and music, when it should be done, the types of occasion in which it should be performed are culturally specified. Like during my research, this particular research I'm currently doing here in South Africa, the Xhosa traditional dance, the henso, the dance is more or less used by the traditional healers, which is the diviners in Xhosa culture. So not just everyone that can perform the dance. So it's linked to this particular culture, and just like in most African cultures, in Nigeria, this Ikerebele dance that I investigated, it is linked to Ube festival, it's a traditional festival. So when we check these different culture and their musical performances, we see that in most societies in Africa, they are interrelated, they are connected with what they use these musical practices for. So it's not just for entertainment, but it goes just beyond the entertainment. There are songs and dance for entertainment, and there are some that they use similarly for worship of the gods and to perform traditional healing and rites. Okay, the context of indigenous dance, which I just explained, I will just try to be a bit fast. Familiarity with people's culture is essential when investigating indigenous musical practices and cultural traditions because they represent the people, what they believe in. So the interior African cultural tradition, because they are more potency than gesture and represent most profound human history. So it's more profound because it is a particular dance that learning so dance that if you perform this dance, you'll be able to look, oh, this is from Xhosa culture, or this is from so with this musical performance, we'll be able to locate a particular culture, we'll be able to know, oh, this particular this represents also culture and it reflects their traditional belief, their traditional belief system. I think the values of regional musical practices in African society, I think you can take, if you don't pass the slide, just have to skip B because I think I'm going to run out of time. So you can just follow up with a slide. So most indigenous musical practices in African society relate to the origin of the people. They are performed during communal occasions and reflect cultural life of the people. Indigenous musical performances are cultural practice that is considered a source of aesthetic delight and a means of forging communal relationships. So during these performances, people meet together, they perform, they connect, so they get it's a part of is a source of social cohesion, because during these festivals, musical musical performance, traditional musical practices, people come together because it's a communal act. So no one can lay claim to a particular dance or a particular song or a particular uh, tradition, because it's a communal right. Anyone is permitted to perform the song. No one can lay a claim to it. So it's more or less a communal act. So these musical performances are considered part of everyday life of the African people. They are initiated traditional rulers and their elders who are the custodians of this tradition. So in yeah, so according to Chini, when he was investigating this Chona Ndebele dance in Zimbabwe, said the Nende and his Ngoma indigenous dances are example of indigenous dance used to communicate with the spiritual realm by the living. So this spiritual realm depicted as the ancestors keep an eye on the living and has the power to intervene. So according to this particular these Agoma indigenous dance, they are used to connect with the spiritual realm, which is the same. This is Shona tradition and Indebele tradition in Zimbabwe. The particular tradition the cultural tradition I'm investigating correctly, the music and dance is still used to connect to the ancestors, to connect to invite the ancestors. So this, when we talk about interconnectivity, interconnection in African tradition, this is one aspect we should still uh, you can look is connected in most communities. That music and dance is not just used for every and anything. It has There are some that are meant for entertainment. There are some for war, that is meant for during war, and there are some that are meant for during farming. On when a woman gives birth, there are some songs that they perform. So in most African communities, in most African culture, we can see the relationship between music and dance from one culture to another, because it's being used to perform different cultural um, which word will I use? Yeah, different cultural practices. So I'm just trying not to be too academical. So I'm trying to make this a bit conversational. So in African culture, indigenous dances are incorporated into commemorative cultural events, like as I earlier stated. While reflecting on characteristics of indigenous dances in Xhosa culture, the research that I undertook, Xhosa indigenous dances are important part of Xhosa culture because it is inculcated in the from the young adults. So they are the view that most of does this view is from most of the traditional Xhosa dances are performed during initiation ceremonies, rituals, and social gathering to help preserve their custom and tradition while also educating the public about their cultural tradition and history. This is talking from the Xhosa culture, because I just related to the Zimbabwe culture now previously. This is talking about the Xhosa culture, which is in South Africa. So he also claims that Xhosa people execute traditional dances and music for ritual during formal and informal ceremonies. They are performed, for example, to welcome dignitaries to the community and social events that involve traditional or cultural gatherings to honor the ancestors. So this is still connected to what I explained with the Zimbabwe and Ndebele and Shona dance in Zimbabwe. So it's still linked to the ancestors to worship. So indigenous musical performance in African communities serve wide range of societal purposes. They believe that in indigenous musical practices in African society, traditional, they reflect the people's communal life, their values, social relationship, and indigenous knowledge. The Ngongo dance of the Xhosa people It's an indigenous dance performed by the older Xhosa women act as a liberating experience for teenage girls transitioning into adult duties among the Xhosa people. So this Ngongo dance is used for the youngest transitioning into adulthood. So we can see it's still related to the tradition. So if we lose this dance that is connected and this music, the songs that are connected to these traditions, to this culture, so what will be left of the African culture, African tradition? So we can just be talking about the African economy, African uh, medicine, and every other aspect of it. But we should still be focusing on this tradition, this key aspect of our tradition, because these are the things that was left behind that we should protect. Like indigenous music, they are the symbols that distinguishes the African way of life because they are rooted on the people's indigenous knowledge and culture. So our musical practices are rooted on our indigenous knowledge and culture. Another vital function of music and dance in African communities is their ability to promote sense of belonging and cohesion, which according to Cheney is the heartbeat of African society. Regional musical performances are used to denote the origins of traditions using tales and dance movement to convey vital historical experiences. Like, for example, the Karanga peoples in Chiwamba in Zimbabwe, they use these Chiyambera dances to retell the Chingarenga war that took place in Zimbabwe. So these dances involve the portrayal of activities and social structures in daily life, as well as history expressed through music and dance. Going forward, to the Ekpo and Onyeji 2020, they rated the value of Keku dance among the Jukon people in Nigeria. They have the view that Keku dance is linked with various cultural philosophies for the Jukon people, from the construction of local musical instruments to the formation of the dance and the music and the choice of the costume during performance. They are culturally linked to the Joko people, the culture. The Keku dance performance reflects the people's societal value from the beginning of the dance performance and the musical performance to the end. The overall Joko philosophy of unity, peace is emphasized, just like the previous dance that is being used by the Zimbabwe people to portray the unity and cohesion. So it's just the same thing happening here in Nigeria by the Jokun people. So when we linked all this together, we see musical performances and dance, they are not just for entertainment, but in almost all African communities and society, they are linked together. They used to portray not just the culture, but the salient things that hold the communities together. So consequently, indigenous musical practices are communal property in African society, like I said earlier, asserted. Anyone present during performance can partake. There is no divide between the performer and the audience, except for a few ritualized religious or initiated dances. There is no boundary between the performer and the audience. Even ritual dances often include audience participation period. So, going through to the conclusion now, it can be deduced that some indigenous musical traditions in African society are going extinct because the musical practices are under attack as a result of new entertainment venues, which have caused the younger generation to stop gathering for cultural ceremonies. And indigenous musical practices necessitate the need to study and document these indigenous musical practices. This paper, rather conversation, concludes that it is possible that critical study not only traditional musical tradition, but also the variety of other indigenous knowledge that are in danger of becoming extinct in order to document them for future purposes. This conversation recommends that African countries develop and implement new curriculum to mandate teaching of indigenous musical practices in their locality, so that future generation will begin to appreciate this indigenous custom. This is achievable by enlisting the assistance of resource persons to assist in identifying indigenous musical practice of music and dance to be taught, including those from minority ethnic groups. So government officials, I would also recommend government officials engage in cultural activities that include the younger generation in schools and communities so that they can recognize and appreciate indigenous musical practices in their society. Because without this without upholding this our indigenous practices, what is the end game of being an African? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Benjamin, for that insightful discussion. Yeah, so right about now, I'm going to invite my co-team in person of Timi, who is going to be doing a recap of Dr. Benjamin's discussion. Over to you, Timi.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm sure you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
So we thank Dr. Benjamin for his presentation. I thank him in the first place. Is my is my namesake, and an interesting paper he has presented titled "African Culture and Indigenous Musical Practices," and it's quite. He has raised a number of points here this evening, which I think each of us can interact with in our reactions and questions. But more importantly, he did speak about himself having done some work in the area of music as it pertains to the Yoruba and Urhobo cultures. He's presently working on his postdoctoral activities now in South Africa, and still reflecting on the place of music in African culture. Now, he did say to us this evening that music, and of course, the dances, the forms of dance that accompany music, is not to be understood in the African culture as mere entertainment and, mere entertainment that just passes away, but as something that is, that encapsulates life in a big form. And they did went as far as saying that for African music and the accompanying dances, there are rituals connected. And these things are connected to celebrate or bring alive the beliefs and the norms and the knowledge systems of Africans. So as such, music and dance would function as vital elements of cultural tradition. And then he did refer also to the new ways, what I would call the new ways, by which I mean the experience of coloniality and the new religions, the foreign religions that have come to Africa over time, and the role these new ways have contributed to the gradual waning, or if we might say it properly, the gradual pushing into extinction of African music and dance traditions. So I think these are very important points we should pay attention to. Then he did, of the many things he said about the place of African music and dance in culture, he did mention, he did make particular references to the role of dance in celebrating rites of passage, in worship, ancestral veneration, people passing from childhood to adulthood, and more importantly, I think for more practical purposes, the place of dance in therapy, that is, for the human quest for healing. And then I can't represent his paper, but I think these are the salient points he did mention. And then, of course, more important again is the place of music and dance, the dance performance, as it connects to the representation of tales and histories. And we all know the place of history in any political system. We cannot live without history. Otherwise, we'll end up making same mistakes in our existence. So sometimes music and dance would touch essentially on histories of particular context, and that is very important. And it did mention that really, if we pay attention to the place of maybe dance and healing or dance and history, we get to know that the human person in the African context must live beyond just the reflections on economy and other what you might call ephemeral things, so to say, maybe not in that context, but that history is also important and not just focus on economy. And then conclusively, he mentions again the importance of revitalizing and documenting our indigenous musical practices and dance practices as a way of consolidating African knowledge systems and development. And the place of educational policies promoted by government is also very important for continual existence among us as Africans. So I think essentially that's a recap of what he has told us. And if I'm not jumping gun, I may like to throw a quick question. And I was particularly thrilled by the reference to dance in therapy, dance in healing, dance for healing purposes. And I would like him, when he reacts to us, how we can bring that alive, really, because the question of health is also very important to everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Benjamin. And thank you once again, Dr. Benjamin, for that presentation. So to all participants, if you have any question for Dr. Benjamin, you can actually make use of the chat box. When it's time for our question and answer section, we'll definitely address all questions. Thank you once again, everybody. So for now, we move to our next speaker, who is a Senegalese in person of Dr. Lamine. So I'm just going to do a run through of his biography before he takes over. So Dr. Lamine obtained his master's degree in business and economic law from the University of Paris, and backed to MA degrees in law and practice of electronic commerce and ethics and business management sciences from the Paris Descartes University. In 2015, he obtained his PhD in management science from the University of Paris. He has been lecturing at the Department of Management Science, Université Paris Descartes, since 2012. As a large-scale entrepreneur, he is currently the co-founder of CAIS Agro-Industries Food Production in France and Alliance Vet International, which is AVI, which is also in Senegal. He's the consultant trainer of MOC2 Consulting in France, the co-founder and publishing director of Nouvelle Edition Numérique Africaine, NENA, which is an African publishing firm explicitly established to promote the reading of African works and also safeguard the African publishing heritage for future generations. So without wasting much time, I'd like to invite Dr. Lamine, who would be presenting his paper in French. However, we have an interpreter who is actually going to translate in English. So can we all please welcome Dr. Lamine with a virtual clap as usual. And Dr. Lamine, you can actually have the stage.
Okay, thank you, David. Hi everyone. Donc bonjour à tous. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Donc merci en tout cas. Je remercie tous les membres de l'ANR, de l'African Research Network, pour cette initiative où on se rencontre et on débat sur les sujets qui concernent l'Afrique, donc les Africains d'Afrique et les Africains de la diaspora. Donc, et je remercie aussi le docteur Benjamin, en tout cas, pour sa présentation magistrale, donc sur l'intersectionnalité et le rôle de la culture, en fait, au niveau de l'apprentissage et au niveau de l'éducation, donc à travers la danse, etc. En fait. Donc moi, je vais me présenter assez rapidement en fait. Donc je m'appelle Lamine SARR en fait. Donc je suis chercheur en sciences de gestion, donc en management des nouvelles technologies, et je suis aussi éditeur numérique en fait. Donc au sein de NENA. Donc, NENA, c'est les nouvelles éditions numériques africaines, donc qu'on a créées depuis 13 ans et c'est une entreprise sociale dont le but est de numériser, donc rassembler et rendre accessible le patrimoine scientifique et littéraire africain, en fait. Donc, l'objectif derrière, c'est vraiment de pouvoir proposer à l'ensemble des chercheurs africains, de pouvoir proposer à l'ensemble aussi des étudiants, à l'ensemble aussi des élèves donc africains et d'autres chercheurs aussi non africains, donc d'un ensemble documentaire donc sur tout ce qui est écrit donc d'un point de vue scientifique et d'un point de vue culturel donc pour l'Afrique. Donc moi, ce que je vais vous présenter aujourd'hui, c'est qu'est-ce que c'est qu'être africain donc d'un point de vue du Sénégal. Donc le Sénégal donc qui est un petit pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest en fait. Donc, qu'est-ce que c'est que être africain au Sénégal? Donc, le Sénégal, en fait, c'est un pays à peu près de 196 000, donc 712 kilomètres carrés. Donc, c'est un petit pays qui est entre le Mali, donc entre la Mauritanie, donc les deux Guinées, donc Guinée-Bissau et Guinée-Conakry et la Gambie, en fait. Donc, c'est un pays donc, qui est longtemps connu donc, pour une tradition assez diplomatique. Donc, actuellement, le président sénégalais est le président en exercice de l'OUA. Donc, ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est que donc, le Sénégal a eu beaucoup de penseurs, donc beaucoup de chercheurs, en fait, donc, qui ont vraiment apporté des contributions assez significatives donc au panafricanisme. Donc, je veux nommer par exemple Cheikh Anta Diop, donc que tout le monde connaît, donc sur ses travaux concernant l'aspect noir, bon, pour ne pas dire l'aspect nègre de la civilisation donc égyptienne, qui est l'une des plus grandes civilisations au monde pendant 3000 ans, donc qui a donné au monde donc toutes les sciences qu'on connaît aujourd'hui, donc qui vont de la géographie, de l'astronomie aux mathématiques en fait. Donc, ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est qu'au niveau du Sénégal, en fait, donc les différentes villes, en fait, donc du Sénégal, vous avez Dakar, Thiès, Kaolack, et la langue qu'on utilise officielle, c'est le français. Donc, par contre, on parle donc des langues nationales comme le Wolof, le Diola, le Pulaar, le SARR et le Soninké. Donc, comme l'a rappelé très bien le docteur Benjamin, donc dans sa présentation sur l'intersectionnalité et la culture africaine, en fait. Donc, ce serait bien dans nos écoles et dans nos universités, en fait, donc que on puisse apprendre à partir de documents donc d'origine et de sources locales, en fait, donc d'origine et de sources locales, donc ce qui permettrait une meilleure appréhension de l'apprentissage, donc à la fois pour les apprenants et à la fois pour les enseignants. Donc l'autre point aussi, donc c'est que le Sénégal, donc c'est un pays assez varié. Donc, en termes de religion, en fait, donc c'est un pays à 95% de musulmans et 5% de chrétiens, mais les 95% de musulmans et les 5% de chrétiens donc ont une base entre guillemets animiste en fait. Donc la religion, il y a un syncrétisme religieux, donc que ce soit les musulmans ou bien les chrétiens. Il y a une base de la religion qui est l'animisme en fait, ou bien les pratiques ancestrales en fait. Donc, ce qu'il faut comprendre au Sénégal, c'est qu'il y a une dualité en fait. Donc, il y a une dualité. Donc, en principe, donc le Sénégal est un pays laïque, donc est une république laïque. Mais ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est que la véritable source du pouvoir, donc là où il y a le pouvoir, donc le pouvoir ne se trouve pas au niveau des élus. En fait, le pouvoir se trouve au niveau des communautés religieuses. En fait, donc les communautés religieuses, à savoir donc les chefs religieux. Donc il y a des confréries au Sénégal donc qui sont assez puissantes. Donc je veux parler de la confrérie des Mourides, donc les Mourides, les Tidjanes, les Layènes et les Niassènes en fait. Donc le véritable pouvoir en fait se trouve vers ces gens-là en fait, ces guides religieux qui ont plus de pouvoir que le pouvoir politique en fait. Donc, c'est pareil aussi pour la communauté catholique, en fait. C'est-à-dire lorsqu'il y a des problèmes au niveau du Sénégal, en fait. Donc, ce sont ces guides religieux-là qui les règlent en premier. Donc, c'est l'une des raisons pour lesquelles donc le Sénégal est l'un des pays les plus stables, en fait. C'est-à-dire, lorsqu'il y a des problèmes politiques, en fait, ça se résout au niveau des communautés religieuses. Et lorsque les chefs religieux parlent, donc, tout le monde suit les recommandations qu'ils disent. Donc, ça, c'est quelques aspects, on va dire, de la situation sociologique. Donc d'un point de vue économique, donc le Sénégal, c'est le second pays en termes d'économie de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, donc derrière la Côte d'Ivoire. Donc c'est une économie essentiellement donc agricole et essentiellement qui repose sur le service public. Donc, mais il y a quelques difficultés donc concernant donc l'électricité, donc l'accès à certains besoins de base. Et dernièrement, donc le Sénégal va être, d'un point de vue économique, à partir du mois de mai 2023, un producteur de pétrole, parce qu'on a découvert des gisements de pétrole au large du Sénégal. Donc, il y a eu tout un débat, donc on espère que ça va pas, la malédiction du pétrole ne va pas donc s'abattre sur le Sénégal comme on l'a vu dans d'autres pays africains en fait. Donc ça c'est un peu d'un point de vue économique la situation du Sénégal. Donc en matière de politique étrangère, donc, le Sénégal est un pays très actif en matière de politique étrangère. Donc, dans la plupart des organismes internationaux, en fait, donc vous avez des représentants. Donc, on a organisé pas mal de conférences, notamment dans le domaine de l'éducation, en fait. Et le Sénégal faisait partie donc du Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU donc de 2015 en 2017 donc comme membre non permanent en tout cas. Donc le Sénégal est un pays assez actif en matière de politique internationale. Donc là récemment avec la crise en Ukraine, donc on a eu une position donc concernant le non-alignement donc par rapport à la crise ukrainienne. Donc ça c'est des informations concernant donc le caractère assez actif de la diplomatie donc sénégalaise. Donc autre point aussi que j'aimerais aborder donc concernant qu'est-ce que c'est qu'être africain. Donc au Sénégal en fait le Sénégalais c'est à la fois donc celui donc qui vit au Sénégal et c'est également donc les Sénégalais de la diaspora en fait. Donc les Sénégalais de la diaspora. Donc ça veut dire que au Sénégal on a 14 régions en fait. Donc 14 régions et on a créé une 15e région. Donc la 15e région c'est la région qui représente les gens qui sont de la diaspora, c'est-à-dire ils ont un député. Donc, il y a presque 3 à 5 millions de Sénégalais qui vivent à l'étranger, donc sur une population au Sénégal de 16 millions d'habitants. Donc, la diaspora constitue vraiment une part entière donc du pays, et c'est dans ce sens-là que donc le fait d'être sénégalais donc et le fait d'être africain pour nous en fait c'est pas seulement lié donc au fait de vivre en Afrique, donc c'est pas seulement lié donc au fait d'être né en Afrique en fait. Donc, c'est lié au fait que l'Afrique, comme le disait donc Kwame Nkrumah, donc nous sommes africains non pas parce que nous sommes nés en Afrique. Donc, nous sommes africains parce que l'Afrique est née en nous. En fait, l'Afrique est née dans notre cœur. En fait, c'est-à-dire il y a une place, donc une place importante dans la vie économique, dans la vie culturelle, donc dans la vie aussi politique donc des personnes qui sont issues de la diaspora. Donc quand on parle de personnes issues de la diaspora, donc ce sont les personnes qui ont immigré, et ce sont également donc les personnes qui ont des enfants qui sont nés donc dans la diaspora, donc qui ne sont pas nés en Afrique mais qui ont leur place en tout cas. Donc, ma présentation ne va pas être longue. Donc, voilà, en tout cas, cette perspective que je voulais partager avec vous, donc, sur la place donc, sur ce que c'est qu'un Africain, donc, dans la perspective d'un Sénégalais de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Donc, juste, j'ai oublié donc quelques informations en fait. Donc, je disais tout à l'heure, donc c'est la dualité entre le pouvoir politique donc et le véritable pouvoir. Donc, le véritable pouvoir au Sénégal, donc c'est pas le pouvoir politique, donc c'est le pouvoir, on va dire, des communautés. Donc, les communautés religieuses en fait, donc que ce soit les Mourides, les Layènes, les Tidianes et les catholiques. Donc, quelques exemples d'hommes célèbres au Sénégal, donc connus donc pour le rapport à la science, pour le rapport à la culture africaine. Donc, Cheikh Anta Diop, donc je parlais de Cheikh Anta Diop tout à l'heure. Donc, il y a aussi Léopold Sédar Senghor, donc le premier président donc sénégalais à qui on doit, on va dire, toutes les institutions donc culturelles donc au Sénégal. Donc, la culture est assez développée. Donc là-bas, que ce soit l'art, que ce soit la musique, que ce soit la danse, parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'écoles, donc il y a beaucoup de musées également, et il y a beaucoup de travaux, en tout cas, qui ont été menés dans ce sens-là. Donc je vous remercie en tout cas pour votre écoute, et je reste à votre disposition. Donc si vous avez des questions.
All right. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Lamine. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Even if I'm not so fluent in French, I was able to follow through with your slide because it was translated to English. Thank you very much. So, yeah, you're the third speaker.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you, Austin, for putting in my presentation. I'm also trying to. Am I clear on the other side? Can
Yes.
you all hear me clearly?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can hear you loud and clear.
Very clear.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Like I've been introduced, my name is Irene Seme. and thank you for for introducing me. As tonight we are debating per se, like who is an African. So I'll be talking more of my own views, but I have quoted from the speech of the former president of South Africa, who was at the time the deputy president, Thabo Mbeki. Maybe many of you might know the name. So Thabo Mbeki, in his famous speech titled "I am an African," which he delivered on the passing of the new Constitution of South Africa in Cape Town on the 8th of May 1996. The former president of South Africa, who was at the time the president under the regime of the great Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki spoke of who is an African. Oh yeah, thank you. May his soul rest in peace indeed. May you please go to the next slide. Okay, it looks like
So we start
I am
from
an African. I owe my being to the hills and the valleys,
I think the sound
the
is
mountains and the glades, the rivers, the deserts, the trees, the flowers, the seas, and the ever-changing seasons that define the face of our native land. My body has frozen in our frosts and in our latter-day snows. It has thawed in the warmth of our sunshine and melted in the heat of the midday sun. The crack and the rumble of the summer thunders, lashed by startling lightning, have been a cause both of trembling and of hope. The fragrances of nature have been as pleasant to us as the sight of the wild blooms of the citizens of the veldt. The dramatic shapes of the Drakensberg, the soil-colored waters of the Likwa, Iqeli, Lotugel, and the sands of the Kalahari have all been panels of the set on the natural stage on which we act out the foolish deeds of the theater of the day. At times, and in fear, I have wondered whether I should concede equal citizenship of our country to the leopard and the lion, the elephant and the springbok, the hyena, the black mamba, and the pestilential mosquito.
I think we've lost
A human presence among all of these, a feature on the face of our native land just defined. I know that none dare challenge me when I say I am an African.
Thank you. So as I have just explained that in South Africa alone, there are 9 tribes, if not more, and many of which those tribes exist in other neighboring countries of South Africa. Like I made an example of Basotho because I am Mosotho, and we are surrounded by South Africa and other. So if you can look at the map, you see where Botswana is. We have, like in South Africa, we have Basotho almost across the country itself, but we also have a large part of South Africa that is surrounded by Basotho, or that is dominated by Basotho, and that is the Free State province. It's a Basotho region. Even more, even more significant than Lesotho country itself. Like it's the Free State province in South Africa. It's bigger than Lesotho on a map in size. You see, so to date there are even some Basotho who still fight, but not a physical war for that part of Lesotho to be part of, for that part of South Africa, which is the Free State, to be part of Lesotho again. But it's still an ongoing debate. They even have a movement. They call it Basotho movement for what I forgot. I can't remember it from the top of my head as of now. But another example is that of Botswana. One of the first Southern African countries which have a large number of tribes living in South Africa in the Northwest Province. And Northwest Province is also one of the large provinces of South Africa. It forms a very large part of South Africa. We will see it on the map there. You see on the next slide there. On the next slide, Austin, if we can move on to the next slide, I want to show people maybe who are not, who are not aware. No, go backwards, or maybe we can leave it on this one. Yes, this one is fun. You see, this is Lesotho, the country, and this is the Free State. It's like Free State is covering Lesotho, and Free State is only a province. This is the province that is dominated by Basotho nation or Basotho tribe. So you see, it even has a capital town and many other towns there in South Africa. So to continue showing this idea that we are all Africans, we are one nation, let me make an example of Eswatini. Eswatini has a number of tribes. We have in Eswatini they Swazi, Zulu, Tsonga, Afrikaners mixed. We usually call them coloureds. Here in Southern Africa, we are used to calling them coloureds, people of mixed race, and they also have other nations. And all these tribes that I have mentioned which exist in Swaziland, they also exist in South Africa, as you can see. The next to Eswatini. Okay, I think Austin, you can go to the first slide before this one that you have shown, because I think it will make a clear comparison. Yes, thank you. Eswatini has the Swazi, the Zulu, the Tsongas. No, the next one, not this one. The Swazi, the Zulu, the Tsonga, the Afrikaners, coloureds, which is the mixed race. We call them this one. No, don't pass. Okay. Then there's I just wanted to portray this comparison here. Here we have South Africa, the languages and the ethnicity. So in South Africa, you identify in ethnicity, you identify with maybe 4 ethnicities. The one I haven't mentioned here. Yeah, no, 3, only 3. It's either you are colored, you are white, or you are black. So there are many languages. There is Afrikaans, there's Xhosa, there's Zulu. We've mentioned Zulu people for Swaziland. There's Sotho. We've mentioned Sotho people for Lesotho. That is where the interculturalism relations comes in. Then we have Botswana in South Africa. But all these tribes in South Africa, when it comes to ethnicity, they are all black. If you're not white or colored, or Indians also. Indians of late, Indians also identify as their own. They no longer fall under the ethnicity of of Black people. They're no longer identified as Black, but they are identified as Indians. Let's go to the 13th slide, Austin. The 13th slide, where we have the Zimbabweans. For example, in Zimbabwe, there are also a number of tribes and ethnicities. There are people. Shona is the most dominating. Shona people are the most dominating in Zimbabwe. Then there are Ndebele and the Kalanga. Then Ndebele, they are also there in South Africa. In Lesotho, we have the Ndebele people. And where else? Yes, in Lesotho and in South Africa, and in Eswatini, they also have the Ndebele people. They probably form a small part of the group, so they probably fall under that section where it was highlighted as others. Then they have Venda in Zimbabwe. Venda people also exist in South Africa. If you can look at the map of South Africa, you will see that Zimbabwe and Limpopo, they share the province of Limpopo, where Venda people come from. They share a border. So there's also Tsonga. Whites, Tsonga are also, they're also from Limpopo. We know them as people who come, the Venda and the Tsonga, we know them as people who come also there in Zimbabwe. Then there are white people, and then there's the Shangani. The Shangani, they are also there in South Africa, in the province of Limpopo. So the province of Limpopo in South Africa comprises of many tribes, or a number of tribes, of which many of them come from, or they are also available or exist in other nations, in other countries that are close to South Africa, like Mozambique and Zimbabwe, especially the Tsonga and the Tsonga people and the Shangani people, the Shangani from Mozambique. On the next slide, the ethnicity groups in Lesotho. The ethnicity groups in Lesotho, as you can see, we have Basotho. Well, because this information is from the internet, it's not Sotho, it's actually Sesotho, well, in my language, but in South Africa, they North Sotho and South Sotho, who are not Sotho. Our Sesotho is very much similar, but those who are not Sotho, it's our Sesotho language or dialect, it's similar, but it differs with only particular words. Maybe, for instance, one word could be used, but it would mean different things depending on where one comes from. And usually the North Sotho, it's the Bapedi people and the so the South Sotho are the Basotho, who the belief is that they originate from here in Lesotho. Then in Lesotho, we also have the Zulus and others. And here on this section of others, as you can see that it forms a small part of it. This others includes people like the Xhosas and Ndebele, the Indians and Chinese who are born here in Lesotho, who identify themselves as Basotho. We will get to that point, and I will explain. Then you will be able to understand. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. In the next slide, okay, that's a nice of Afrique. I just learned recently that Afrique means it's Africa in French. So the next slide, how we identify, slide 16, Austin, how we identify ourselves as African expresses the complex relationships we are involved in as human beings. We occupy different roles and are members of other organization groups and communities. So as you can see, here we are as Africans in a beautiful, very lively, very beautiful like I've mentioned, that we are a very beautiful nation of Africans. So first picture, I think this for us here from Southern Africa, when we see people dressed like this, we identify them as Africa. So the next, those beautiful women in their blankets are the Ndebele. Those are the Ndebele. And then we have the Vendors, we have other tribes, and we have the Swat, the Kenyans there by the corner of the slides. This is. I think these pictures, I like it. It portrays who we Africans are exactly. We are a very happy and lively generation. You can see even with the way we dress, the colors that we wear when we dress up. They are very colorful. They are very colorful colors which portray the peace that we have. As Africans, we are shaped by countless plans. As Africans, we are shaped by countless planned and unplanned influences determined by the environment, be it society in the form of family, school, culture, religion, or politics. What remains is the fact that we are all Africans. Despite of whether we are now living in the modern day world and we are now engaged in many activities, and some of us even live now outside the continent of Africa, identify ourselves as Africans. That's why I'm saying, as Africans, we are shaped by unplanned influences determined by the environment. Sometimes, like the modern day that we are living in, we have we're using a lot of modern things, but we haven't lost ourselves of who we are. Many of Africans are living abroad, but they haven't lost the sense of their Africanism. They still remains Africans there. And living abroad in overseas, like in Europe, in America, in Asia, it means that you're joining other cultures, you are joining other religions and everything, but those do not remove the fact that you identify as an African, that you are an African and you remain an African despite the environment that you live in. So yes, even the next slide shows that. Now, Lesotho. This is a beautiful culture. As I am Lesotho, you see the water stream that you see there, it's actually a dam. This is the famous Katsi Dam. This is the famous Katsi Dam that supplies South Africa with water. This is the famous supplies South Africa with water. It's a very beautiful place, and whenever you visit Lesotho, you should make it a point that you go up the mountains. And these are the boys, these boys or these men who are in red blankets. They are now men, no more boys. They come from an initiation school, and this is their graduation day. The day that they come from the initiation school, then there's a ceremony in the village. This is what happens after maybe 3 or 6 months maximum that they spend without living with other people, with their families and their society, learning the culture and everything. They come out as men. It doesn't matter whether you are under 18 or what. If you come from an initiation school here in Lesotho, you are now identified as a man and you are supposed to behave like a man. So when they come unique music that is called Mangai. I know that might be difficult to pronounce for others. And this is on the first picture, this is our famous Basotho hat that depicts the mountain Pilwane, right next to Tababusibu. These men are in our famous Basotho blanket. You know, wherever you see Mosotho, you expect to see the blanket. But despite all that, there's this picture that under this gentleman, you see, it's the city of Lesotho. You see, we still have modern buildings and all that, but it doesn't. That hasn't removed the fact that we are Africans and we identify ourselves as Africans, and our sense of Africans and as Basotho, it still remains deep within us. We still identify ourselves as who we are. Who is an African? To be an African, one does not have to have been born in African continent or from direct ancestors of African blood, even though the circumstances of life can, even though through the circumstances of life, one can identify themselves as an African. Like I've mentioned, the ethnic groups that are available in Lesotho, that the small part that was written, it probably represents the Indians, the Chinese. Here in Lesotho, we have Indian people who identify themselves as Basotho. They don't even want to be called Indians. Like, they say they are Basotho because they don't understand how they can identify themselves as Indians, yet they haven't even been to India. It's because their great grandfathers or even great grandfathers, you'd find that they're of the 4th generation that is here in Lesotho, that has been born here in Lesotho, and some even haven't even been to India at all. So they identify themselves as Basotho. You see, that is why I'm saying, even though the circumstances of life, even though the circumstances of life, one can identify themselves as an African, whether you are born in the continent or from direct ancestors of African blood. Now, of late, we have the Chinese people who also identify themselves as Chinese, especially these young ones who are born here in Lesotho. They identify themselves as Chinese. So here's the quote from Thabo Mbeki, where he said in his speech, he said, "I am come from those who were transported from India and China, whose being resided solely that they were able to provide physical labor, who taught me that we could both be at home and be foreign, who taught me that human existence itself demanded that freedom was a necessary condition for that human existence." Just to support the statement above. I'm almost done. Here we are. We have the Chinese Africans, 10 years of tourism. 10 years of tourism. I think even from how this tourism is it's written, it tells us that it's TORYISM. I think it comprises 2 words, which is tourism and history. So 10 years of tourism, Chinese Africa. These are just the pictures that supports my point of who is an African. I would like to quote again as about my presentation from Thabo Mbeki's speech. I am an African. I am of a nation that would not allow that fear of death, torture, imprisonment, exile, or persecution should result in the presentation, in the preparation. I am born of the people of the continent of Africa. I am of a nation that would not allow that fear of death, torture, imprisonment, exile, or persecution should result in the perpetration of injustice. I am an African born of the people of the continent of Africa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time.
All right. Thank you very much, Irene, for that beautiful presentation. At least
Thank you.
I now have a little understanding from your understanding of Lesotho, so even though I've not been there. Thank you very much once again. By the way, your slide looks beautiful. Your
Thank
slide
you so much.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So without wasting much time, I can see some of our hands are raised. Be assured that we're actually going to have a section for question and answers where you can actually ask your questions, and our speakers are actually here to answer all of your questions. So for now, I would like to call on Augustine to do a recap of Irene's presentation. Augustine, you can actually take over now.
Okay, thank you very much. Irene, that was a very beautiful presentation, and it's so wonderful. And it's not just talking about Lesotho, which you are from, but you also try to capture the region of southern part of Africa. And your presentation really shows some kind of connections, because you try to look at the ethnicities we have in most of the countries in South Africa. And when you look at those countries, you found out that the tribes, the ethnicities that were there are found across all other nations. Like you talk about the Mozambique, what we call Lesotho, South Africa, and then you see all this connection, and you're able to join it that, obviously the African people were just one, but colonialism tore them into and created this border. And this language, in spite of that, the language and everything, and then you connected the modern with what we call it, with the, what we can say, the traditional or the previous. You connected the past of Africa with the present. So we have these beautiful buildings that you have been able to show, and but you also with art too. But the same people that transit still have all that defines them. And you try to answer the question, who is an African? And you quoted Thabo Mbeki, who seems with his presentation at the United Nations. That was a very nice one because it's a historic presentation. It shocks the presenter watching it from that video when he just uttered an African. It's like it sounded beyond just his words. It echoed something else in the mind. And then the inclusiveness is one of the things that you emphasize in this paper, that the African Indians, the African Chinese, whether children of colonialists or laborers that were brought in by the British government during the colonialism, also identify as Africans, and you believe that they should be welcome as an African. And this is quite insightful. We appreciate your presentation and the effort you have placed into it. Thank you very much. Over to you, host.
Thank you very much, Augustine. Thank you once again, Irene. So I don't know if Benjamin is ready for the recap of Dr. Lamine. If you're ready, Benjamin, the floor is yours. Benjamin, can you hear us? All right. So are you trying to say something? All right. So sincere apologies once again for the interruption caused by network. So I would just like to apologize on behalf of other guest speakers who are not able to make it here today due to technical issues. And so without wasting much time, we would move to the question and answer section. So this is an opportunity for you to ask your questions. And the person who will be coordinating this section is no other person than Augustine. And I just want to let you know that we have all our guest speakers here. Dr. Lamine is still here, Dr. Benjamin, as well as Irene. So if you have any questions, I know some of you have been typing your questions on the chat box. However, if you want to speak, this is the opportunity for you to raise your hands and we'll let you speak. So thank you very much once again. Augustine, you can take over.
Thank you very much, David. Dr. Lamine, you can show your face. I think there's a time for conversation, and I think a lot of people want to engage with you. Dr. Benjamin, we'd like to see you up, even though this is virtual, but this is the time for a kind of a question from the participants. And Dr. Benjamin and Irene too, you have to be here too so that you can. So we have 3 speakers here. And to be honest, people have been applauding the presentation right from the onset because it's more or less like you work together. Dr. Benjamin starting with the culture and the essential part of African culture, which is music, and it shows the connection. And for the first time, Dr. Lamine tried to explore an aspect of Africanness that seems, when we look at our previous presentations, this idea of religion, this idea of Islam, Christianity, and African traditional religion, which we call animism, which shouldn't be anyway. And so we have this holistic formation. And then there have been comments in the chat. Please drop it. Very interesting, since I'm a young person from Kenya. I definitely understand all that has been said. And it's quite an idea to start educating young people on their culture, as this will definitely help them understand and appreciate their culture wherever they are from in Africa. And Liz has been putting up her hand. So we have enabled the ability to unmute yourself. So please, Liz, you can come in and ask your questions directly to the speakers. Liz?
Thank you, Augustine. Thank you. I did think it was very interesting, this conversation. All the guest speakers who have spoken, they spoke very well. Just as a young person, I do have a question. Because I never learned my language, I'm from Kenya and I'm Kikuyu, and I'll be speaking on more about myself, I think, in like July. As a question I have is, how do I have access to learning about my culture when I don't speak the language? Does anybody have an answer for that?
Okay, Irene want to have a go. So Irene.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Liz B, that is very that is a very interesting one. I never like that, because usually I have learned as I was studying in South Africa that most of Africans, they didn't know their native languages, but they were very much willing, like yourself, to learn about their culture. So I think the easiest way would be, first, if you're not living in your country, Kenya, like you're saying you're Kenyan, but you don't know your language, it's first to visit the country. You visit the country, you find someone to tell you some interesting facts about the Kenyan culture. I know in Kenya they have many tribes as well. Also, one thing that you'd need to know is which tribe of Kenyan you belong to. Then you learn more about that tribe. You can learn now. The nice thing about more nowadays is that there's a common language that we all speak, which is English. So I'm sure you'd find someone there in your country would be very much willing to teach you the culture. Because to learn a language, I don't know how old you are, but as I was doing my thesis, I was my thesis topic was on language and identity, because I found it very much interesting. It was first time ever in my life that I a lot of people who didn't know their language, but they identify themselves as people of that tribe, but they didn't know their language. That is where my thesis topic was intrigued. So it's very important that you go, you visit Kenya, you find which tribe you belong to, you learn the culture. But with language, it will also depend with your age, but also with your IQ, despite the age, because apparently if you are older than 25, it's not so much easy to learn the language, but there are some certain words like greetings that you can learn.
I'm very interested in language as well. And so in school, I did learn French. So I was born in Kenya. That's the thing. So I know I'm Kikuyu. But yeah, you'll hear more about my backstory. But I was adopted as well. So I think there's a lot of there are a lot of issues that I have, and obviously I'm learning about them. But yeah, I'm very open to it, and I do have friends back in Kenya. Obviously, want to go back. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to have conversations with people. I think that will be like, you know, more meaningful, and I'll be able to understand definitely. So thank you for the advice. Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, can I add something?
Please go ahead, Dr. Lamine, and then Dr.
Okay,
Benjamin.
so thank you, Liz, for your question. It's a very interesting question. So one of the issues in Africa is the lack of documentation. So especially in local languages. So that is one of the issues that we try to to address in NENA. So some tips for you. So there is some application with you can learn your language. For example, if you type in Google the top 7 of application to learn African languages, so you will see application like Fongbi or Lingua Arena. So Lingua Arena application, so you can learn languages like Wolof, Bambara, Swahili. So I don't know if your language is on this application. So, but it is a very interesting question for people who don't who want to learn their languages. So.
Cool. Thank you, Lamine. So wait, you said the top 7
top 7
language apps.
Yes, top 7 of application to learn African language. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. That's very perfect because yeah, obviously, you know, I'm a modern gal, so perfect. Thank you very much, Lamine.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay. Dr. Lamy just took what I wanted to say, so I think he's reading from my script. So I'll just go over it again. I think this present modern technology, we can actually have access to learning language from applications that we can download from Google Store, can even use. And even though you're not in Kenya or where you're from, your language, I think one other way that it can help you can at least have, because most country once they're outside the country, most African when they're outside the African continent, they have this community of friends, community of families that they call friends, that they are from same place, and you might meet them when you go to African shop or anywhere. At least when you have community of friends that you know you can at least interact with in your local language, that means is a stepping stone for you to at least identify someone that is a close contact that you can be able to start with the greetings, because that's the first and first. Because there's nothing like saying too old to learn a new language, but this is not just a new language. This is your language. This is your roots. So I'm not sure one will say you're too old to learn a language. If you're learning a new language, it's different. But this is your roots. This is what you this is what they brought you up with, though you didn't grow up there. But I think if you have people there still in Kenya, you can have someone dedicated to that you can communicate with via WhatsApp, talk, send voice notes in English, and it's okay, say this in my language. This technology, you can, before 3-4 months, if you're dedicated, you'll be able to greet someone in your language. I think that should be able to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, I've tried looking on Facebook and stuff for groups, but it doesn't really work. So yeah, but I do have a close friend and she's also Kikuyu, so I'll definitely, you know, approach her and be like, okay, like we had a conversation anyway where like she was trying to teach me Kikuyu then, and I was like not accepting it. I was like, no, I don't want it right now, but I'm definitely ready now. So thank you. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irene. Amara, you have a question? Oh, there's a question dropped in the chat by Ivan K. So well, we don't know if you want to speak to it, but Amara, you can have a go since you have your hand up. Esther Amara, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Good evening, all. Thank you to all our speakers for such interesting lectures. I will start with the first speaker. I think there is a need for us to differentiate between colonialism and coloniality. I'm raising this point because when Benjamin, the second Benjamin, was trying to give a recap of what Dr. Benjamin said, he mentioned coloniality as if he's using it interchangeably as colonialism. Coloniality is much different from colonialism, although both are interrelated. When you talk about coloniality, you are talking about the continuous presence of colonial oppression, domination through race, language, and sex, and whatever you will call it, that continues after colonialism in Africa. And when you're talking about colonialism, you're talking about the ever-presence of these colonial masters, taking charge of African economy and all areas of African lives. Aside from this issue, I want to raise another one. When the speaker was talking, he was laying the foundation of culture, of the influence of colonialism, Christianity on our cultural music. He forgot to mention Islam too. Islam has an influence on how we interpret our indigenous cultures and music. And I think you should bring in that factor in your paper. Another thing you said that I'm still thinking seriously. In your concluding part, you said something. You said that we should try to preserve our indigenous music, cultures, and rest of them in their original form. And I'm thinking, the idea of culture brewing, where culture interacts with cultures, where we borrow from other cultures and domesticate it. Do you still think that we still have such original and unique indigenous African culture and music? Number one. Number two, don't you think that, for argument's sake, I'm agreeing with you now, that there is something original when you come to indigenous African culture? Don't you think preserving it in that original sense will reinforce some negative aspects of our culture? That is for this first speaker. Then I'm going to the last speaker, Irene. I think her presentation for me, although it's very good, very commendable, is not easy, but I think it is one-sided. By one-sided, I believe that her lecture looks at only the similarities within Africa, a certain part of Africa, I beg your pardon. I believe that looking at the differences will enable us to go beyond the intercultural conflict, the xenophobic attack we are recently facing in this part of Africa. It will help us to go beyond it, because just saying that we are all African, it negates the facts. It negates what is happening recently in this part of the country, where some Africans are killing other Africans and saying that you do not belong to our country, you should go to your country. Aside from that, another issue I have with her presentation is her definition of who an African is. I think such definition is too loose. Why do I think it is too loose? Because when you say that you can be an African, you don't need to be born in Africa, you don't need to have ancestors in Africa. It means that someone in US can claim to be an African, someone in in UK can claim to be an African. I think there is a need to draw that line that an African is so and so, rather than leaving it loose. And such a loose definition, again, goes contrary to when you look at the legal system. For example, for you to be an African, for example, it means that you are entitled to some rights within the African continent. And when you leave it that loose, it means that someone coming from US can also claim such rights, which is contrary to what is happening recently now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amara, for your question. And I think that our speakers have been served individually questions, but I will ask them to keep it on their paper for now. Let's take all the questions together because there may be some kind of interlock. So we can have Barata Williams. Barata Williams, please go ahead with your comments or questions. And then we take Anthony. Barata Williams. You need to unmute yourself. Barata. Hello, Barata, we can't hear you. Okay, while Barata is trying to navigate, Anthony, please, Anthony, you can come in. Anthony, you can give your questions to the speaker so that they can compile your comments. Please, go ahead, Anthony.
Yes, good evening to all of you. And,
Anthony,
can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes. I'm sorry, I was not at the beginning, so I didn't hear the first and the second presentation. I think I only came in when Irene was presenting. So my question is for her. And by the way, nice presentation. Most of the things you presented resonates with what I'm thinking. But then I still have the same observance that the last speaker, Amara, has about your definition of who an African is, because after listening to you, I'm still struggling to understand who an African is. And why am I raising this question? In 2018, I was in South Africa and I lived amongst white South Africans. They are whites and they claim to be South Africans and they have South African passports. But at any slightest problem or any slightest issue, they are quick to use their secondary passports. Some of them have UK passports and American passports. So at any slightest issue, they are quick to claim their secondary passport and they will disappear, either go to the US or go to the UK. And stuff like that. And black man like me, I don't have anywhere else to go. Africa, for me, Africa is where this is my home. So there's nothing I can do about it. So I don't know, in one of your slides, you mentioned that to be an African can be planned or unplanned influences. So my question is, can we still say that you can be an African by association? It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be born in Africa or you have to have an African blood. Just by associating with what we claim to be African, does that make one an African? And as Amara pointed out, if not, anyone can claim to be an African, like the people I lived with who claim to be Africans, but at the slightest issue, they carry their secondary passport and find their way out and leave us to deal with our issues. So I don't know, maybe to clarify on that and maybe give a tighter definition of who an African is. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for Anthony Uduaka. And then we know that the speaker has noted the question and the speaker can get support from other speakers too, if they agree or disagree with that. So we take another hand. Sorry, we have to just take all the questions together so that you can have a kind of sequential way of responding. So Ivan K, I don't know what the K means. If you'd like to tell us your full name and then raise your question. You have raised that in the chat, but it's good you speak to your question. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Yeah, the second name stands for Chambade. That's a Ugandan name from Uganda.
No, happy to have you here. Yeah.
Thank you. I've already asked the question in the chat, and I'm sure it's been noted by the speaker. I won't repeat that same question.
Okay.
I might, if there's a need for a follow-up, I might address it when he answers. Another reason why I won't repeat it is that I heard my sister Esther Amara ask something similar, so it would be a bit repetitive to speak on that again. But I just wanted to comment on something that again that Esther raised, and also the most recent speaker Anthony, which was a question directed to a presentation by Irene, challenging her definition of what it means to be an African. And I have to say that I'm more in support of what Irene's stance is of having an open view of what Africanness is. It seems to me that a lot of this discussion so far is focused on Africanness as African culture and African identity as something that we are passive. We suffer passively. We have no influence or no agency over. It's just something that happened to us. Now, this is a dangerous view to take, because you'll be trapped in some of the previous bad habits that I mentioned. These historical, I mean, our culture has been very beneficial to us, but that's also accounted for some of the reasons why we're here. Why Africans are still struggling to on fronts like unity, collaboration, and why we surrendered so meekly to colonialism and to the evils of other slave trade. Now, what other cultures, what other parts of the world have done in order to achieve the success they have done is they've taken a proactive stance at building their culture. There's been some agency about defining what is good and what is bad, right? They've not simply surrendered to, okay, this is how it used to be, that means this is how we'll continue. Or these are the geographical aspects, and I was born within this geography. That means I must be defined by whatever someone in the past defined this geographical area as. So I agree with Irene that to define Africanness, we should really look at who wants to be there, who has a goodwill of developing the continent, and who's committed to building it, right? We talked, the brother talked about Brother Anthony talked about these white people who came into South Africa. But you have to realize these people came 400 years ago, right? 400 years ago in the 1600s. That's when the Boers landed on the Cape of Good Hope. That's a long time to be here. That's longer than the US has been around, right? So you can't simply say that these aren't Africans because of their recency, or because they have different other passports to fall back on. What we should look at is, do they want to be here? Do they have the goodwill to live among the rest of the Africans as part of the culture, as part of whatever identity we're trying to create? And if so, then we should accommodate them. The same for the people Irene talked about, the Chinese and the Indians who are brought as quick labor. If they have nowhere else to go, and they've been here 400, 500 years, then they belong here. I think that's the point I wanted to raise.
Thank you very much, Izo. And I think the question of Dr. Benjamin has the first question that you raised. And if we can just go straight to take the responses, and then we can come back for another batch of question and answer. So from the order that I'm seeing it now, we just take it from the order of presentation. So Dr. Benjamin goes first, Dr. Lamine, and then Irene follows.
Well, thank you so much for the questions and the comments. We start with Amara, but I'm not sure I picked if I'm able to respond to all of them, but I think most of this thing was comment and the question, which I will just try to align it with what is it Ivan K just said now. What I was trying to say about the pre-colonial time it's before Africa was colonized. We had this culture, this rich culture. Talking about, because I was just specifically based on the musical practice of culture, because that's my field, ethnomusicology, which is strictly not strictly, but focus on ethnomusicology, which is the ethnic side of music and how it originated, how it was born, how it's been propagated over time. When I was speaking about that, they came in with the Christianity, yes, both Islam too, but I spoke more of Christianity because that was the response I got from the field, mostly from the field where I did the research. Because in Delta State, in Abraka Delta State, we have more of Christian influences than the Islam. Because let's say 90% of the influence there on the cultural aspect is Christianity. Because we have less Islam than I'm not sure we have more. Islam is only when we step outside of the community that we can talk about Islam. Even the other research I did, even in South Africa here and Edo State in Nigeria. So they basically, what the response I got is mostly Christianity that has influenced the culture, because the colonialism, they came in as Christian missionaries to tell us, okay, because most of our dance and the music are related to our divination worship. So they said, okay, these are the things that we should set aside because it doesn't go in line with the Christianity. So that is one of the reasons that it diluted our culture when in terms of music and dance and even other cultural facets of the African continent. That is the reason why I only stated Christianity. Yes, Islam still have its own influence in some part of Africa, which is I would definitely include. And going forward, when I spoke about the if like the last question about conservation in the original form, one thing I always encounter this problem every time I present. So I'm just wanted to make it, when I say conserve it in the natural form, it doesn't mean being stuck there. Yes, when you conserve something in the natural form, that is music, I go to the feed. If I can, okay, her question was if I can actually get the natural form of the music. Yes, we cannot get the natural form, but we get what is close to it. So when it comes to what is close to it and the natural form, that is the reason for what we are doing. Document the closest to the original form that we have. Because when you say you want to conserve the dance and musical aspect of, we can't get it from the younger generation. We go to the village, the rural villages. Those are the places we're able to get the original context of the song. They explain everything, how it's came in. So you get it from those old, one who brought it back to the city, to the township. Okay, what did you think about this song? Can you translate it for me? It's one of the just published. They give you different definition of what the song is trying to portray, because they've not added the modern, the contemporary terms to generalize to dilute the original form. So when we conserve the original form, we are not going to be stuck there. It gives us how to evaluate how much we have changed, how much we've moved past. Because when you say original form of music and dance, it is African. It is our roots. It's not only in even every other culture, even the Western culture, that preserve their original form of their music and their dance. So they go back to it to evaluate how far we have gone. So, but one thing with African tradition, we are not stuck there. What they made us to believe that it makes us, okay, being stuck. No, it gives us the opportunity to evaluate how far we have gone, and we are not departing from it. Okay, like let me just use for instance, in this traditional healer ceremony, I just finished research last December. There are particular songs they use during these rituals, right? If, like, for instance, someone comes in and use a different song, like, let me say, okay, a song that is not of the Xhosa origin, even the locals there will not have the feel of being, this is my heritage. I can't bring something borrowed culture for something that has to do with the real culture. So if you understand South African perspective when it comes to culture heritage, because of their past and all that, they hold on to the culture, like to an extent that they prepare most of their the Department of Art and Culture holds most of their artifacts in high esteem. So when I say we preserving our culture does not mean we're going to stop there. It's going to give us the opportunity to evaluate how far we've gone, how far we still going to proceed. Then how are we able to hold on to the root, the culture, that we're able to tell our children tomorrow that this is how it was before, this is how it has grown. And yes, I think if that should explain it, and if I can just throw a bit of, I don't know if it's going to get to my turn again. Okay, let me just give Irene the opportunity to speak, because I wanted to speak something about the question they asked her, but let her speak first about that. I hope I'll be able. Okay.
Have you addressed the questions you have jotted down? But if you haven't, we can always come back to you and you can address.
Yes, I did. I wanted to throw light on the questions they asked Irene before.
Okay, now maybe we can come back to
after
you.
she's done. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Benjamin. Now, Dr. Lamine, you can come in with your response to the questions that has been directed to you.
Okay. So before, I would like to thank Ivan K for your contribution. So about the question of Amara and Anthony, so they raise an important point about the definition of who is an African. So I think, in my opinion, there is 5 dimensions on defining who is African. It's very difficult to define who is African, but I think the first dimension is a fact. So we cannot debate about the facts. So the first dimension is about the history. So it's in the history, the original name of Africa is Kemet. So according to the African historians, so like Obeghare, like Cheikh Anta Diop, or the Professor Biogo. So the original name of Africa is Kemet or Kama, which means the land of black men. So that's why in my opinion, the first definition of who is an African is someone who have an African blood and who is born in Africa. So basically, that's the original, the basic Africans. So, and the second dimension is a herd dimension, because I see many people, so from the diaspora or from other country, who Africa born in their herd. So there's people we cannot reject them. So because according to my point, they are too African. So the third dimension for me is the people who receive the call of Mama Africa. So it's something very, very personal. So I see many people, so from the diaspora and from the other country that who are actually going or returning back in Africa, because there is, I think, something very spiritual that Africa is calling some people to the renewal of Africa, and there's people that Mama Africa are calling. So it's not depend on race. It's not depend. It's depend of something that I cannot explain. So the simple explanation that I can give is the fact that as an elder of the humanity, so we have been rejected. So we have been victim of racism, of and so what. So but we as an elder of the humanity, so we don't have to reject the other. And Africa is Mama Africa. The Mama Africa call is learning us that we must accept the other. So not everyone. So but the people who are interested. So the people who are the hurt in Africa. So that's the fourth dimension. So and the last dimension is the people from the diaspora. So and their children. So because in France or in Western countries, people are assimilated to be Africans. So whether they want it or not, so it's a fact. So these people are also African. So for me, that's the 4 or the 5 dimension of who is African. So
thank you very much, Dr. Lamine. And Irene, it's your turn. There are a lot of questions I wrote here to you, so I believe you have enough time now to respond to them.
Okay, thank you.
I had the question.
Okay, you can wait. Someone who has a question, please wait. Let Irene address this current question. Irene, please go ahead.
Let's take. I can.
No. Let's go ahead, because we just want to handle the first batch. Then we can go for the next batch.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Amari, about the first question concerning the xenophobic attack, please allow me not to dwell much on it, but all I can say is that as Africans, we need to embrace ourselves and our being. We need to learn who we are, so that we love each other. The xenophobic attack, they are really not so much necessary, and many factors surrounding it. So please understand if I say to you, let me not dwell on it that much, but that all as Africans, we need to embrace our being and love one another as Africans, and look after one another as brothers and sisters, because the sort of attacks are crucial acts that happens there, and there's no human being in their good state of mind who can do those kind of acts to another human being of their own. I would like to emphasize that, of their own. Concerning the loose meaning of who is an African, I'm responding also to you and to the second person. I didn't catch the name. I'm very much sorry about that. But I know you have this similar question that who is an African, where you felt that where I'm saying those who to be an African, you don't necessarily need to be born of the direct ancestors of blood, right? Yes, I could say yes, I do agree with you. It shows as a loose meaning, but in actual fact, what I mean here, as I said, these are my views, but we are open to debate about it. In my views, like I would like to echo on Ivan K's comments that some of these people are non-Africans, to say, who identify themselves as Africans. Their great-grandparents came here 400 or 500 years back, and they can't identify with any other than being an African. And about the fact that some produce their second passport or their passports of origin, to say when things are not looking good or not going by their own needs. To be an African also, yes, I do agree with Ivan that it also goes with a commitment. If I migrate from Lesotho, to say, as an African, if I migrate from Lesotho to Botswana, when in Botswana, I do as Botswana do. And if I to identify myself or decide to take the citizenship of Botswana, it means now I consider myself as Motswana. And if I'm really committed to being a Motswana, I can't, when things do not go well, I say I am not Motswana. It doesn't go on like that. And those who have the audacity to identify themselves as not Africans when things are not going by the wish, those obviously they are not Africans. It's like you're saying you're a human being, and because human beings are doing some things to other human beings, you decide to identify yourself as yourself as another type of an animal. You see, for them, they do not have the consistency, and obviously they do not understand. Also, they do not understand what they are doing or who they are. They do not understand who they are. Because if you say you are an African, if you say you are Mosotho, if you say you are Motswana, you need to know who you are, depending on who you identify yourself as. On the second question, I took that as one question. I hope it's clear for both people who asked. And another one, it was on the, I think, I forgot, I really did not note your name. I'm very sorry. But you spoke about where I said we are shaped by countless planned and unplanned. I said we are shaped as Africans. We are shaped, not we are made. We are shaped by countless planned and unplanned influences that are determined by the environment that we live in. And those influences are such as culture, such as religion, such as politics, because as we grow up, or as we develop as Africans, to say, or as life goes on, become to turn more into modern, we get to leave behind some certain practices of our religion, because of the influence of the environment that we live in, or the society that we live in. Sometimes we get to live, especially when it comes to culture, we get to let go of certain practices of our culture because of religion. And what does that mean? That means we are shaped by this could be a planned. It could be a planned influence that now, because I belong to this particular religion, I don't feel like it's okay to do this kind of practices of my culture, you see. Or sometimes you go to school in another region or anywhere in Africa or abroad. Those are unplanned influences that are determined by the environment, by the society that we live in. That is what I meant. Was there any other question, Austin, that I missed?
Thank you very much. I think you have addressed the important one, which there's still even conversation about that in the chat. And we know that there are various positions. And what we have is like, we have people who want Africa to just go back to its traditional religion. They want Africans to eject other people who have come in either through colonialism or through trade, or who were brought in, and they want some radical approach. But there are other positions who believe in inclusivity, who believes in not just relying on the past of Africa, but also talking about the new Africa and facing the reality that we have. And the reality is colonialism and other religious influences or cultural influences have taken place, and also the dynamics of the people coming in and out. But the purpose of intellectual conversation is to also generate arguments and to generate different points of views in order to get more questions. And the more we have the questions coming in, it means that something will happen. And then we have the conversation going and people dropping that in the chat. But this is a series, and today we know that Africa is not one. It has different perspective and different angles. So someone who is in Senegal, where 90-something% are Muslims, we cannot just look at Africa as just Muslim, but to the person, majority in that region are Muslims. There are regions where majority are Blacks or Africans, and they don't have whites. Like in most part, it's not a surprise that someone in Southern Africa, like Irene, she's taking the position that she's taken because unlike the Western Africa, which Anthony is from, we have less white people there. And most of these colonial people did not stay, and their generations. So you can't talk about third generations or fourth generation of Chinese, of Indians in Nigeria, or in some part of West Africa. But these dynamics create this conversation, which we continue to take a look at as we have other series. So what are we going to do now is we thank all the speakers. Your work is not done. The series still have 2 more editions in which your input has a long way to go. But we'll end this conversation to keep to time. So all the questions that people have to the speakers, you can drop that in the chat. If you want to get their personal details, you can join the ARN, and then you can get their details as a member, so that I won't just give their details to someone we don't know. So I hand over to the host to continue, but I thank the panelists for this wonderful Q&A session. David, please, I am done with the task.
All right. Thank you very much, Augustine. And thank you all for the interesting and interactive conversation so far. So right about now, we're about to close. But before I do that, I just want to make a few announcements. So we have a WhatsApp group platform where anyone who is not there can actually join. If you're interested in joining the platform, you can actually join, because we disseminate information concerning our webinar series, upcoming events, and so many informations. And we also have a website. So I think Augustine can just help type the website on the chat box, where you can actually go to view more about us, Africa Researchers Network, as well as other platforms like Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. So for previous editions of our webinar series, you can actually watch them on our YouTube platform, just to know what we've been doing so far. So before I close today's webinar series, as Augustine has earlier thanked our guests, I also want to use this opportunity to thank everyone who made it present today. Without you all, we wouldn't have a webinar series for today. So Thank you once again, Dr. Benjamin. Thank you, Dr. Lamine. Thank you, Irene. You all have done a wonderful job today. And to all participants, I thank you all especially once again. So once again, this is David. I'm glad to have hosted this webinar series. So that's all from me. So we'll be having another webinar series, which is titled The Africa Diaspora Culture. And that should be on the 25th of June. So when you actually join our WhatsApp platform, as well as you actually view our website, you actually see all this information there. But just to like do the normal routine by announcing it before the end of the webinar series. So we'll be having another webinar series on the 25th of June, which is titled The Africa Diaspora Culture. And we'll be having our guest as well, but this time around, we'll be having Dr. Kwame Shabazz, as well as Bro Shaka Islop and Sister Tamara Reed. Yeah, so that's for our upcoming events. So thank you once again, and bye from me.